to another episode of Wiggy Reviews. Today I'm going to jump right into our next book. It's a thriller called Gideon's Sword by Preston and Child. Now, some of you may recognize the name of the authors, Preston and Child. I did already review their most recent release, Blue Labyrinth, which included their other main character, Aloysius Pendergast. That is the Pendergast series. That's completely different than this one. This Gideon's Sword introduces a brand new character for a brand new series that they are working on. The character's name is Gideon Crew, and he is a bit different than Pendergast in a number of ways, but we'll get into that later. So I want to go ahead and start by saying I enjoyed this book. It was a good book. I was a little nervous to start reading it because I loved their Pendergast series so much, and I didn't know how I felt about them beginning a new series. Not that they haven't worked on other books, they've had their own standalone single books, each author on their own, that included characters from the Pendergast universe. This one doesn't include any characters from the Pendergast universe. It's a brand new series, brand new universe. And I guess I'll start by saying kind of a brief overview of the story. So Gideon Crew witnessed his father's death at, I believe, the age of 12. I was very off. So he witnessed the murder of his father at the age of 12, and his mother claimed that it was a setup, that the government set up his father, and that Gideon, as his son, should seek revenge. So of course you're thinking, oh, it's a revenge story, okay. Fun fact though, he finishes his revenge within not even the first few chapters of the book, so you realize pretty quickly that this isn't going to be just a revenge story about his father. There's something else going on underneath. Gideon, once he finally accomplishes his mother's dying wish, seeking revenge for his father, he decides he's going to start living his life, because he hasn't been living his life. He's been training himself, he's been learning all these skills to help him in his quest to avenge his father. Now, unbeknownst to Gideon, a secret organization has actually been watching him, paying attention to his life, and witnessed him killing the man who was responsible for his father. And this piques their interest, and they approach him and they say, "Hey, we have a job for you, and you're the only man who can do it." And Gideon, at first, is very apprehensive. He's like, I don't do that anymore. I just want to live a normal life. But then the organization gives him some bad news, and he says that Gideon has a rare disorder, a rare disease, and he doesn't have long to live. And they offer to pay him a lot of money to do the job. So Gideon, kind of being shoehorned into it, accepts the job and must now go after a Chinese scientist who is bringing some form of weapon or something into the country, and he needs to get that before assassins kill him. And thus begins Gideon's story, Gideon's Sword, which is the main plot of the book, is just trying to get this secret information, these secret plans from a Chinese scientist before assassins come and kill him. And it goes into a whole lot of, secrets that are going on between the Chinese government and then also the US government and all these other people involved. If you could follow any of my ramblings, that was the basic plot of the book, is Gideon trying to get these plans and saving them from the world powers that want to use it for evil. Now, Gideon, I'm going to talk about the characters for a little bit, just because I feel like they played an important role in this story. I'm only going to talk about really two of them, the protagonist and the antagonist. So Gideon Crew, our protagonist, I really enjoyed him. Like, I enjoyed Pendergast from their other series for a different reason. He was such an enigmatic character, and he had such unique little quirks about him that made him interesting to read. Gideon is more of kind of an everyday man who just happens to be also an ex-art thief, and he knows how to pick locks, and he's very intelligent. He's able to improvise on the spot, and he's very, very clever and good at what he does. But he's normal. He's a normal guy. Like he doesn't have any odd quirks other than his past life in crime, and he's just kind of a nice guy. He doesn't really he's not really he does, like, when you think of someone who steals art, like, you think of like a villain who's going after it for money. But he was doing that to hone his skills in order to avenge his father. And it was nice to have a character that was very more kind of everyday, a very relatable character. And there were a couple times where you sensed the authors kind of slip back into their Pendergast roots, because there were a couple times where Gideon had like a very high-class tastes that were very reminiscent of Pendergast. And it felt a little out of character, but it only happened, I think, once that I can think of, when he was fishing and he went up to his little secret cabin and there was something, I forgot exactly what he said, but I just remember there was something that I kind of went, I don't think he would say that, but it was only that one time. And the rest of the story, they were able to keep his character very solid and very continuous through the story. And like, it was an interesting, also because he was so human in a sense. Like, Pendergast was human, but he was very cold. He was a very cold character, very pushing everyone away, kind of had his own little thing going on. And then Gideon was very much like, he was more open and welcoming, and he was just kind of like, he could pass for in one instance, he pretended to be the lover of a man that passed away. He said we were partners, and he was able to portray that emotion very well and easily, and be able to still actually feel a little bit of the actual emotion, because he understood that this man died unfairly. So overall, Gideon as a character is a nice change from Pendergast, because we had Pendergast, who's like this cold, very singular entity that kind of just exists on his own, and then we have Gideon, who's more open and warm and kind of accepts help from others more easily than Pendergast ever did, and he's more relatable. I think I used that term already, but he was more relatable than Pendergast was. And then we get into the protagonist. The protagonist for this is a Chinese assassin named Nodding Crane, who is very skilled, very skilled. He actually beheads a man at one point. I don't know how, they didn't mention how, but he just, and the interesting thing about Nodding Crane, that actually, I didn't know, it was kind of a weird thing. I don't know if it fit as well, but it was kind of a nice little thing to have for him, was he was very obsessed with blues music. He played blues guitar, and one of his main assassin weapons are actually handpicks, which are used commonly in blues music when you play the guitar, because he had one for each finger, and they were sharpened, and he could, slice an artery or, stab someone and all that. And I don't know why it felt weird. I think it felt weird because they mentioned how he was raised in kind of like monasteries, like Buddhist monasteries, and then he was also taken by the Chinese government. So I never really understood where he was, when he was ever exposed to blues music in a way that would make him obsessed in so much, in the sense that he could play it, he could sing it, and all that, and it was just weird. I don't know, I mean, I liked it because it was an interesting, because there's always something, whenever you have a protagonist that is highly interested in one facet of something, it's always very interesting, and it makes them a little more human in a sense, but for some reason it just didn't fit well for me. I felt like it was a bit of a stretch for me to believe that this Chinese assassin who grew up kind of not anywhere near a chance to listen to the music as often as someone who would normally. I don't know, it was just weird, because they mentioned his backstory and they mentioned how he heard blues music and then he became obsessed with it, but I just got the sense from his training since he was a child, when he went to from his childhood all the way up through his adulthood, through the Chinese government and through the Buddhist monastery that he stayed at, that it was kind of just thrown in to be like, oh, here's something interesting about him that makes him a little more human, is he likes blues music. But other than that, like I think if it hadn't been such a, I don't know, maybe this was an error in how they wrote it. Maybe they weren't clear enough. I'm not sure. I'd have to reread it again, the particular chapter where they talk about his childhood. But it was still interesting, because it also gave him a chance to, or the authors a chance to create a very interesting character who loves this blues music, and he uses an assassin tool that is, related to that. And then, like, just the character overall, like, yes, he was a cold-hearted assassin, but he was intelligent, and he was a very good protagonist for Gideon. Like, they were perfect matches, and perfect, they had, I don't know what I'm trying to say. They had a perfect pairing, I guess. They were a perfect match for each other, and they really, the interactions between them, the few that there were very intriguing and very interesting, and it made you very worried about who would actually come out on top, because they both had their perfected skills that really came into play. What else? The climactic scene that happens at the end was as usual very exciting, and Preston and Child are very good at writing these really tense scenes and these really like heart-pounding, like, are they gonna make it scenes, and they're also very good at describing the exact situations in a way that, and they're also very good at describing the situations that these characters are in a way that makes you actually feel like you're there, and you can feel the breath in your own body kind of like straining as the characters are straining, and then you feel like if they, like, you feel invested. You're very invested in these scenes because they're written so well, and I really appreciate that about their writing overall. Overall, though, I want to say that this series, I'm interested in reading the next, I think there's two other books out now. I'm very interested in reading them because the way that because as I mentioned before, Gideon is told that he has a very rare, life-threatening disease, and he doesn't have a lot of time. So I'm very interested to see where they're going with this series, because they kind of made it very clear that he only has, like, not even a year left of his life. So it'll be interesting to see if they find a way around that, as you know, what usually happens with characters like this. You know, it happened with the original Sherlock stories. The author killed Sherlock off, and he was like, I'm done, and people were like, no, you can't be done, you have to write more. So he brought Sherlock back without a proper explanation, because there's no way really to explain it with how he killed him. But I'm curious to see if they do that with Gideon, because he has a life-threatening disease that they say is non-curable, and Gideon has proven himself. He's found proof that it isn't a trick, like originally he thinks maybe this isn't. Maybe they're just pulling my leg just so I can work with them. So it'll be interesting to see if they go the route of he finds a magic cure or whatever, or if they go the route of he is going to die, and once he dies, that's it, no more of the series. So we'll see what happens. I'm very curious. I'm going to be reading the other books later. I may not be reviewing them unless there's something unless we get to that point where the fork comes in, whether they choose to find a cure or whether they choose to just let him die. We'll see. So let me just do a quick review. The story, really well written. I've never doubted that these guys could write well. It was very enthralling. I was very eager to continue reading. They kept me hooked the whole way through. There weren't any really low points in the story where I was kind of like, oh gosh, I want to move on to the more exciting parts. There wasn't any of that really for me in this one. The characters, I highly enjoyed them. Gideon, I think, is a perfect addition to their writing styles. I think he fits very well. He's also funny. I forgot to mention that. He's very funny. He's a funny guy because he's, you know, just trying to live his own life. The protagonist was a perfect match, I think, except for that little weird thing I said about the blues music, which I don't know, I think it was just that they didn't explain it well enough for me. Like, for how well they write, there are some moments in a lot of their books where they don't fully explain things in a satisfying way for me, but I'm able to look past that, I think. There may come a time when I can't look past it anymore. I don't know, I haven't reached it yet. The conflict and the climax of the stories were great. I enjoyed how originally you think the book is going to be all about him avenging his father, and then it turns out that gets done like pretty quick early on, and then you realize, oh, there's a whole nother story coming in here that's the actual story. Everything was just kind of like a prequel, a prologue to it. So I guess that brings me to my scoring. For the first series, for the first book in the Gideon Crew series, Gideon's Sword, I would have to give it, I think, an 8 out of 10, just because it was the first one, and as much as I enjoyed it, there were still those few points where I could tell they were still kind of writing in their Pendergast voices. and then just like some of the things that they didn't explain well enough for me kind of brought me out of the story a little bit. But overall, I did highly enjoy it. Like, it was a great additional series to their their long list of books they've written, and I think it'll be great. And I'm curious, as I said, to see where they go off in that forked road, and maybe they'll even find a third prong in that to figure it out, instead of having, oh, he's cured, oh, he's gonna die. Maybe they'll find something down the middle that satisfies both camps, because I know there are camps of people who are like, please don't find him a cure, please don't kill him off, all that. So 8 out of 10 is my score for Gideon's Sword by Preston and Child. Now I have a little bit of an announcement. Since April is going to be coming up the next month, I don't know if any of you know this, probably a lot of you don't know this, April was the birth month of one of the world's most esteemed writers, William Shakespeare. So I have decided that for April, I am going to be reviewing 3 of Shakespeare's plays. One I have read and been a part of in a production of, and 2 that I have never seen, never read, any of that. So if you're not into Shakespeare, you may want to skip out on April, but I think you should watch it, because I think Shakespeare is very important. He's a very important writer, and I know a lot of you know some of the plays, but the 2 that I haven't, that I'm going to be reviewing after the first one, I think will be interesting, just because it'll be coming from a point of view of someone who knows Shakespeare but has never read these particular plays. So next time I will be starting the month of April with the play Richard III in honor of the burial of Richard III this past month. So hopefully you'll join me in that, and hopefully I'll open your eyes and maybe turn you on to some more Shakespeare, because Shakespeare is a huge part of my life, and I have to do it in honor of the Bard's birth month. So hopefully you'll stick around for that, and I will see you next time. Bye.